Greetings, everyone. Welcome back to the Crypto Damus Astrology channel. I'm Crypto Damus, here today with a very special guest, my good friend Ray Merriman, one of the most legendary financial astrologers working today. He's got one of the longest running financial astrology subscription services, going all the way back to 1982, I believe he said. And Ray is most famous for his work in gold, but of course he covers every market, from equities to cryptocurrencies, oil to gold and silver and precious metals. So, and currencies also as well. So he's got a large, big picture view of the whole market situation. And we're going to dive into some deep subjects today, including this current Venus retrograde period, what's coming ahead for the US stock market, and of course, cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin. And 2024, we're going to have a big event for Bitcoin, the halving. A lot of people are already talking about that. And that is a supply reduction for the amount of Bitcoin that's going to be created. And that could cause some big moves in the cryptocurrency markets. Thanks for joining us today, Ray.
Well, thank you for having me, Robert. It's a pleasure to be with you. And the only reason I'm legendary is because of the other reason you just mentioned. I've been around a long time.
So you've seen a couple of Saturn returns, and you've seen a lot of planetary cycles. So you've got the experience.
Seen a few crashes and a few booms.
Well, there's a lot of interest in financial astrology these days, and we're trying to educate people on, some basic financial astrology stuff that's going on and what we're looking at for the markets. What are those, as Ray calls them, those geocosmic correlations? So first of all, Ray he's been really supportive of my work for many years. We had an email thread going for, I think, 5 or 6 years before we actually met in person last year at the ESAR 2022. So I really appreciate all the support that you've given me and my work.
You're welcome. We need more work like that.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. So let's talk about Venus retrograde. Venus went retrograde on July 22nd. And I believe you said in one of our correspondences, it's one of the highest probability market reversal signals in astrology, right? If a market is trending up, Venus retrograde can often bring a reversal. If a market's trending down, Venus retrograde can sometimes bring a rebound. So what have you seen?
Well, what I've done is, in my research, I go back to about 1928 when daily charts and the Dow Jones began, and the 1940s or 50s when the Nikkei averages I have. And I go back and look at each of these signatures and observe what happened. What kind of, were the reversals, were there not? Were they 5%, 10%? How big were they? Were they the high of the year, the low of the year? So with Venus retrograde and direct, they were in the top 6. Both of them were in the top 6. Venus retrograde, I think, had a 78% correlation. Nothing's 100%, other than maybe Jupiter, Uranus. But Venus retrograde, Venus direct had about a 75, 78%, 178, 175, to reversals we call primary cycle tops or bottoms, which are usually one of the 2 or 3 highest or lowest prices of the year within 11 trading days. So yeah, that is one of the strongest of all. So if we look at the markets that happened around July 22nd, you'll see the NASDAQ made its yearly high, July 19th. You'll see gold made a primary cycle crest. It was the most recent crest, and silver too on July 20th. You can go back. There's a lot of other markets that did the same thing too in the world, whether it's Germany, Switzerland. There's many markets that did make reversals within 1 week of that, and some were really, really close. So we're going to assume, until proven otherwise, that is a primary cycle crest, between July 18th to August 1st. What does that mean? Well, it means we expect at least a 2 to 5 week decline from there, in which the markets go back and at least test a 45-day moving average, which, as you'll note, they've done that in the S&P already. It's been down 2 weeks. It's hit the 45-day moving average. Same thing, I think, with the NASDAQ. The Dow hasn't hit the 45-day moving average, but all of this fits really, really well with a low 2 to 5 weeks later. And we're in the time band. The time band would probably be done by the time Venus goes direct. So this is the other point. When a yearly high or low happens around the retrograde, you tend to get a contra trend move that continues until about 1 week, maybe up to 10 days around the direct. Well, we're almost in that 10-day period now. The direct is going to be September 3rd. So somewhere around August, next week, actually, August 23rd or so, till about September 10th is the time band for these corrective declines to end. And they would also be in the time band for what we call a primary cycle bottom. So this is all setting up pretty well. It could happen as early as August 16th, even, which is today. So you're actually starting the time band from now through, mid-September. I especially like the period that you and I have discussed before. We got 4 planets changing signs during this time too. You got Mercury going retrograde August 23rd. You've got Uranus going retrograde August 27th. You got Venus going direct September 3rd and Jupiter direct September 4th. When you see 3 or more planets changing directions within a space of, say, 10 days or so, that is another high correlation to primary, or we call half primary reversals. So all of these things are fitting in terms of our cycle studies, in terms of our geocosmic studies or astrological studies. They're all fitting really nicely here, that we should be getting a pretty important low anytime between this week and I would say September 8th or so.
Yeah, I was just throwing up the S&P 500 weekly chart here, and yeah, I mean, this is just such a classic Venus retrograde. You can see that, as you said, the market topped out on the weekly chart on the right around July 24th.
Well, that was July 27th, so that was only 4 trading days after this July 22nd. So that fits. You're getting it within a week. That's really, really good to get it within a week. So, and it's been down for weeks since that time.
And I think that Mars trying to Jupiter kind of delayed the reversal a bit. It had some kind of more confident, bullish energy that was on August 1st. But we've got.
Well, remember, you called that, Robert. You called that in our Twitter discussions. I was looking for the high to happen somewhere around July 22nd, and you thought, well, maybe it can extend to August 1st. Well, you know what? The Dow Jones top is August 1st. The NASDAQ was July 29th, so we both got it.
It's
different market.
It's interesting. Sometimes there'll be a secondary factor that can refine the timing a little bit more closely. But we've got 3 weeks down. The markets are turned a little bit red so far this morning in the intraday trading. And just some basic, really technical analysis here. I've got a kind of support zone on the weekly chart, especially going down to about 42.75, about 4,300 to 42.75 on the S&P 500. And that would be a nice routine 5 to 6% kind of bull market pullback. Certainly it's holding the more long-term trend line here. In my research, I just did for my subscribers, I looked back at the last 5 or 6 Venus retrograde periods just to get a basic idea of how the markets had been reacting. And we had, I think it was 4 out of 5 were down for the S&P 500.
That's
3 of them,
right. That's close to 80%, isn't it?
Yeah. And 3 of them were 10 to 12% down. And then one of them was just a 2% down. And one of them was actually up. And I think that was 2020. I think it was coming out of the March 2020 panic. So there was, Venus retrograde can go up too. People need to also remember that.
Well, if you look back at the 2 biggest crashes of the 21st century, the bottoms were October 2002, and that was Venus retrograde. And the other big one was March 6th to 9th, 2009, the end of the Great Recession. That was Venus retrograde. The markets are big bull markets after both
big bull markets. Yeah. And speaking of things that are going up, we see that, the US dollar actually kind of started to bounce just a little bit before Venus went retrograde, and it has gone on a 5-week rally. And that's a kind of a headwind, excuse me, for equities and crypto. So the US dollar DXY was trending down going into Venus retrograde. Venus retrograde actually brought the US dollar a little bit back to life. So you got these kind of inverse relationships there. So another Venus retrograde correlation, I think.
Yes. Yeah, because the currencies are really, really key, because Venus rules money. And one of the forms of money is currency. So stocks is another.
Yes.
But currencies, interest-related markets, they're all subject to reversals as Venus goes retrograde. I think the T-Nose was also made a reversal down from a high that happened the week of Venus going retrograde.
Well, we looked at Bitcoin. Venus retrograde has not been kind to Bitcoin. I think of the 5 previous Venus retrograde periods going back to 2015, Bitcoin was down between 20 and 25%. So big moves down. Not that big for Bitcoin. That's actually not that big, but 20, 25%. There was one that was flat and none were up. So Venus retrograde was pretty tough for Bitcoin. There was one 2018 Bitcoin crashed actually right on the day that Venus went direct. And that was a weird one because Mercury went retrograde the day Venus went direct. And that was, like you said, when you get 2 planets changing directions, you got a big Bitcoin went into the market low period of that 2018 bear market. But and I am not optimistic for Bitcoin for the next couple weeks, because Mercury is going to station at 21 Virgo. That's the Bitcoin natal Saturn. Our viewers might be interested. That's one of our biggest bear signals for Bitcoin of August. We've been really cautious with Bitcoin. I've been adding a few big name tech stocks, but I haven't added any Bitcoin yet until I see how that one plays out. But let's get to some bigger picture questions here. Ray, what do you see as the best opportunity for long-term investors right now? Long-term investors who are looking to build up their portfolios again, coming out of this rough 2022. Where should they be looking? Where are the big opportunities right now?
I think we want to look at the long-term planetary cycles and the relationship in signs, because something really, really big has started in 2023, going to go to 2026, and that's all your outer planets are changing signs. That hasn't happened where all of them change signs within 2 years. They've changed signs between 2023 and 2025. That hasn't happened since the early 1700s. And before that, it was in the 1400s, the Renaissance times.
Wow.
Okay, so it's a 300-year phenomena when this type of thing happens. So when you ask me what are the big opportunities, I think in terms of Uranus going to Gemini, trine Pluto in Aquarius. Okay, and especially Uranus. Uranus in a sign is our boom bust cycle. There are markets that go up on average 4 to 8-fold from their lows that form around the time it goes into a new sign. So Uranus going to Gemini. So what are the boom bust areas? Well, Gemini is communications. And with Uranus, it's going to be aerospace, automobile, rail. It's going to be satellites, the flights into outer space. But of course, with the trine to Pluto and Aquarius, you've got the innovation and discoveries that could deal with discoveries in medicine, cures for ailments like cancer. I think they're going to see a lot of cures coming up. The gene research that's going on to identify where there are problems in the gene sequence that could be corrected to avoid certain hereditary predispositions. Of course, artificial intelligence, hydrofusion, all these technologies represent, I think, amazing opportunities in the next 3 to 4 years. You've already seen it start as Pluto went into Aquarius. It started. Yeah. All of a sudden, people are thinking, wow, AI, NVIDIA, all this is happening, all this is exploding right now. Well, this is part of it. Pluto going to Aquarius. Next is going to be Neptune in Aries, and you're going to have Uranus and Gemini. And it's all leading toward what I call the Aries vortex. When Saturn and Neptune come together in the midpoint of Uranus and Pluto. Is all at 0 degrees Aries. It's a vortex. So everything is headed toward that point. And I think you're going to get incredible opportunities going into that time. I think they've already started. So anytime you can get corrections in these sectors that we've just talked about, I think they're good opportunities to buy.
100%. Yeah, Nvidia was one of my big picks in my 2023 forecast report, and I think AI. Yeah, I think AI. The three sectors we really talked about was AI. Quantum computing is something that I've been touting a lot recently. We're seeing a lot of big movement in the quantum computing sectors, especially like IonQ. And also, I like, renewables. I think electric vehicles are going to be huge over the next 20 years with Uranus and Gemini. Maybe the gas combustion engine will become obsolete with Pluto and Aquarius.
Well, that's a
And
20-year transit. So yeah,
yeah,
I would think that would be the end of the fossil fuel movement, just like the Pony Express was given away to the automobile. I think you're going to get these kinds of major energy transformations going on. Yeah, again, I think they've started, but they're not going to really be applicable on a day-to-day basis, I don't think, until you get past that Uranus-Saturn conjunction in 2032. In fact, this whole time, 2020, 2032 is a whole 12-year new era. AIRA, that's when Jupiter and Saturn conjunct, as you know, in 0 Aquarius,
Yes.
which is where Pluto was going back and forth over, 5 times between March and early 2024, 25 even, or late 2024 or so.
So
Yeah, I
yeah,
think these are all
big
exciting areas.
technological changes. The last time, just for our viewers, the last time Pluto was in Aquarius, of course, the late 1700s, we saw really the beginnings of the Industrial Revolution, and we saw many big technological breakthroughs that changed society, including the steam engine, the hydraulic press. I think we're going to see very similar type of new digital age with AI and quantum computing. Renewables like solar, actually, I'm pretty big on solar for the future. So I think those are some sectors that we'll see a lot of growth in. So let's see here. Well, just looking at some
By the
of my
way,
questions.
Pluto is renewables. So you're hitting on the key theme of Pluto. And as far as Pluto going into Aquarius, the last time it happened was April of 1777. It lasted 20 years.
Yeah.
It was a revolutionary time.
Yes.
So we're into a revolutionary time. It was the beginning of our independence, the United States. We had our War of Independence. French had their independence war going on. It was also interesting, Robert, and I didn't get quite in this, and I should, because some of the applications, unfortunately, are probably going to be used in military innovations, military productions, and military weaponry. And that fits because you are, I think, in a war cycle. The last time Pluto went in Aquarius was, of course, our War of Independence. The last time Neptune went into Aries was one day before our Civil War. The last time Uranus went into Gemini was August of 1941, just 4 months before World War II. Our 3 most important wars have been when these 3 planets entered the signs they're about to enter into in the next 2 years. So that's why I think that these Pluto in Aquarius, if it's not used for innovation and discovery and healing of the planet and healing of individuals, the opposite side is to be used for coercion. It can be very threatening. And I think we're going to see that. I think we're already in it, obviously, and we're going to continue in that until we get to the Aries vortex. Then I think it changes. But up until the next 3 years, I think it'll be very, very tense, very, very dangerous, if you will, and very, very exciting, depending which path you choose. We got 2 paradigms, the paradigm of Renaissance discovery and the paradigm of destruction and war. They're both going on simultaneously, and hopefully, of course, the former wins over the latter.
Yeah, those are excellent points, Ray. Totally. Thanks for bringing that up. I mean, that's like, the dark side of Pluto and Aquarius,
Yes.
like, it's like, we saw this talk about, there's so much excitement about AI, but then there's also this, is AI going to take over? Is it going to destroy humanity? Is it going to start writing its own code and get completely out of control? And so that's, a huge danger, right? Everybody thinks of like the
Oh, I'm
Terminator.
concerned about it. Yeah, I'm concerned about being used for, wars, for
Well,
creating weapons of great destruction, especially in aerospace, because you're also going to Gemini. That's probably my
certainly, like AI drones, AI warrior bots,
exactly,
and this kind of stuff like this.
exactly.
Um,
Drones. Yeah.
could
They're
be,
pretty
and
invasive. They're not used to if they're not used to destroy things, or they're used to invade your privacy. So either way, you got
yeah,
Pluto going on here that has to be
surveillance state.
surveillance. Yeah, we have to get a handle on that to protect our individual rights, and that's what Pluto and Aquarius wants to get to in the end. It
Well,
wants
one
to
thing we're
protect.
seeing, I think, with Pluto and Aquarius is this kind of power struggle over with China, between the U.S. and China over technology, AI and quantum technology, over computer chips, right? There's been a lot of the Biden administration try to restrict access and China's ability to import those high tech chips. So we're seeing a big power struggle over technology, and we may be in a Cold War. A lot of people think we're in a Cold War with China. Ray, do you see anything that looks like this Taiwan invasion could trigger a war between China and Taiwan and suck in the U.S.?
It's possible, I think, again, because these three planets moving into these new signs in 2023, 2025 have correlated with war cycles for the US, and they're all ganging up at once. So the possibility, the threat is definitely there. I would be most concerned at the time between our election and the inauguration. Okay. For instance, if Donald Trump wins the election, that China and a lot of other countries, especially the BRICS countries, are going to want to move quickly, as fast as they can, probably, off of dependency on the US dollar. They don't want another trade war. I don't think anybody wants another trade war, but we got a history of using tariffs as weaponry, which disrupts supply chains. And I think China and the BRICS countries are prepared for that. They're preparing for that. They're preparing for that with their idea of another currency that's going to be backed by gold and maybe other precious metals. I don't know if that's going to last, because as Pluto goes into Aquarius, I think the ultimate currency isn't going to be gold backed. I think it's going to be a digital currency. That's going to be dominating the transactions of exchange of values. It's not going to be gold and silver so much. It's going to be digital. But if you ask me if there's a threat of a war, I think that's when it's going to be, is between the election and the inauguration following November 2024.
What is the planetary geocosmic threat?
Well, I think that's when Pluto fully goes into Aquarius around that time.
Yeah.
Uranus is getting ready to go into Gemini. Neptune, I think, is very close to going to Aries at that point too. So I'd have to go back and look a little more closely, see what the other aspects are. But just the fact that Pluto's back into Capricorn now and going to go back and forth over zero Aquarius, and zero Aquarius where the new era began, with Jupiter and Saturn conjunct in zero Aquarius. So it's like a Pluto conjunct Saturn conjunct Jupiter. It's like all of that going on at once. It could be really, really good transformation. And I think we're seeing that with discoveries, or it could be very, very threatening. And usually with Pluto, you don't escape it. You're going to go through some difficult times, some difficult challenges. There's jeopardy, there's danger. But we have to go through that and come to our common sense to get past that by the time this 3-year period is over, which is 2026.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's turn back to the markets for a second here, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to throw up that S&P 500 chart again. And so we had that big wipeout in 2020. I'll throw up the weekly chart here. Had that big wipeout in 2022. It was lined up exactly with the Saturn Uranus square. The market started down on the last technically exact one, and I believe it bottomed on that sort of very close but not technically exact one in October. And this is a classic market wipeout, which we've seen, also in 2008 and 2000 on Uranus Saturn hard aspects. So that's over. The good news is that's over. We got through the Uranus Saturn hard aspect cycle, which is a market killer historically. And the long-term trend line is intact. Going back, if I throw up my monthly chart here for the S&P 500, right? This is just every major pullback has just presented buying opportunities for the long-term investor. I'm relatively bullish on on stocks. I think that there's going to be some good buying opportunities right now with this Venus retrograde and Mercury retrograde. Could you give us your thoughts kind of more on just the big picture long term? Do you see the
let's look at
S&P
the long term.
500 making new all-time highs anytime soon?
I think it's very possible.
Or do you think we have another big crash coming like Michael Burry?
I'll get to that in a second too. Okay, I want to point out the Jupiter-Saturn cycle. So that low was Saturn square Uranus, was also Jupiter at the midpoint, forming a semi-square to both of them. And the first Jupiter semi-square after the conjunction is usually a time of war, and it's a time of a deep market correction. And you got that right on time. You had a war in 2022, it's still going on, and you had a big market correction that hit exactly when Jupiter was semi-square.
Semi-square, so that's the 45-degree angle, right?
45
not a major aspect.
No, but it's an important one. So 1/8, the first 1/8. Now, after that, the stock market does tend to go up into a high 5 to 7 years after the Jupiter-Saturn conjunct, which would be into 2025 to 2027. And then the 7th and 9th year after the conjunction is when you get the crash. That's 2027 to 2029. And that fits pretty well this time because that also fits McWhorter nodal cycle. When the North Node is in Aquarius or Capricorn, that period is when you tend to get a recessionary cycle. So one of the questions you asked me for to prepare for was, are we going to have a soft landing or a hard landing? Well, I think it's soft right now. I think what you see going on now is a lot like what happened the last time Saturn made a square, waning square to Uranus, 1976, 1980. The markets went up, but they didn't make new highs. But they didn't go down much either. It was a stagflation. It was a stagnant time. It was a very slow growth period. There was no crashes. And by the way, you don't get crashes with Democrats in the White House. The market doesn't crash more than 26%. At the same token, you don't get a new all-time highs always either. Maybe 2/3 of the time with the Democrat. With Republicans, you always get new all-time highs and crashes.
More volatility. Okay. Interesting.
So I kind of think that we could make a new all-time high, but I don't think it's going to be really robust, as everybody thinks. I mean, I could make a case for the Dow getting to 45,000, but I sincerely believe that it's going to have trouble getting above 38,000. The all-time highs are around 37,000.
Sorry, let me throw up the Dow chart. The Dow got a little, very close to its all-time high. Now speaking of Jupiter Saturn, we're in a Jupiter Saturn sextile series that has
it doesn't fit with the stock market too much.
Okay.
And nor the square fits, and you got that coming up next year, but it's more for primary cycles, intermediate term cycles, not big cycles.
Do you think that would be a recession, the Jupiter Saturn square? Is there any indication?
Well, I think you're going to be teetering on it. It all depends on how you define recessions these times, these years. I mean, if it's down 0.5% and then it's down 0.1%, the administration says that's not really a recession because unemployment is still pretty low. It may be something like that. I don't think we get any great shakeout in terms of employment, in terms of stock market crash. I don't think the stock market is going to go down more than 26% as long as Biden's in the White House. And I don't think it's going to go up more than maybe 5% above its previous high. I mean, that's just my opinion. You're going to go in a range here.
Sure.
And so, I mean, if we bring in other cycles, outside of astrology, I mean, you got the vaunted 4-year cycle, that happens every 36, 56 months. Well, that'd be between March of 23 and December of 2024. we're due for a 4-year bottom. Typically, those go down about 15 to 21% or so. So I can see a decline coming up. And if I was to pick a time when that would be most likely, it would actually be this year. It'd be before the end of this year. I like the idea of November this year, give or take 2 months. So let's say between September and January, for this, what I would call maybe an 8 to 20% decline. It could be more like 16 to 20, but I think it's more like maybe only as low as 8%. And I think it ties into the Sun conjunct Mars, November 18th in Scorpio, and the Sun and Mars will also be opposite Jupiter, which is one of the top 5 or 6 reversal signatures. It's going to be opposite Uranus again then too. So we got very, very heavy another heavy Uranian period coming up between let's say Mars and Scorpio, about October 12th, November 24th. That's a really, really big, important time between now and the end of the year. And I wouldn't be surprised if you get the pre-presidential election year trough, which tends to happen between September and March before the presidential election. You got the 4-year cycle possibly happening then. You got at least a 50-week cycle coming in then. So in 50-week cycles, usually 8% declines. The 4-year cycle is more like closer to 20%, 16 to 20. So somewhere between 8 and 20% is what I'm seeing happening from the next rally, which I think, if it hasn't started, it's going to start in the next 2 weeks, okay, in the stock market. You're getting a rally. It's going to last a few weeks, maybe into that period of Mars and Libra that you and I were talking about earlier, which would be September 22nd, October 12th, somewhere around there. You got Mars in the last half of Libra. That's a time when gold tends to make a low, followed by a big move up. It's also time the stock market tends to make a high, followed by a good move down. So
I'm just drawing the S&P 500 chart here. I'm just going to put, about a 10% correction, would take us 10 to 11% correction. That would take us back down to about 4,000. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Well, I think you're going to get a new high first.
Okay. Oh, okay. A new high first.
I think you might see the S&P, getting to the 4,700 area, something like that. I think that could happen by middle of September. Okay. And from there, let me back up just a second. It could be anywhere from early September through middle October is where I think you're getting the high in the S&P. And I think it could be 46, 47, 4750 in that area. And then I think you're going to get your 10% decline. Okay. So that would take you, let's say 4,700. That would take you back to 4,200 you mentioned earlier. I like that area for the 50-week cycle bottom. And I like that area.
Well, that's actually also, that is the 100-week moving average currently. Yeah. So that makes sense. If it goes up to 47, as you said, and you had a 10 to 11% pullback, that would tap the 100-week moving average, and that would be a pretty healthy correction here, but still a higher low, still a bullish higher low.
Yeah. However, yes, it would be a higher low in terms of the primary cycles. It's a good correction.
Would still be on the keeping the bullish trend line in track as well. So
that's what you want to watch. You got the trend line correct there. This bull market isn't over until you start closing below that trend line. Okay, because that means a cycle greater than the 50-week cycle is happening. And that means it's a 4-year cycle, maybe something bigger, maybe a 6-year. That low you had last September, October, that was 31 months from the pandemic low. Well, 31 months is almost 3 years. It's a little shy of 3 years. We talk about the 4-year cycle being so strong and so, it's been referenced so much by cycles analysts, but more credible, more consistent has been the 6-year cycle. And all cycles break down to 2 or 3 phases. So a 6-year cycle is breaking down to 2 3-year phases here. And that was the first phase. So the next phase is going to be 30 to 42 months later. That's the big one. That's a bigger one, and that's going to be, that's a 6-year bond. That one I think is going to break that trend line by then.
And when is that?
Well, 2.5 years after last October. Let's see, 30 months after last October would take you to April of 2025.
Okay, so that's a ways. Yeah, that's a ways out.
It goes into 25, 26. It's going to get real crazy. I mean, we're jumping way ahead here.
Yeah, but you
you're
don't
gonna
see
get a
any.
high
You don't
year.
see any big 2022 style wipeouts this year.
Yeah, I do
next.
that.
Then
Yeah, that
okay,
one,
yeah, in
that decline.
2025, yeah, 2025. That makes sense
Yeah,
because there will be a long. Also, there will be the Jupiter Saturn square. That's a very long square. It takes place
yeah.
from September 2024 all the way into the summer of 2025.
You see, and I can
And
make a case the 4-year cycle is going to happen around the election, especially between the election and inauguration. It's going to be kind of wild at that point. That could be the 4-year bottom. You get a good rally after that under the new president, and then another more extreme decline into that 2026, 2029 period we talked about earlier.
well,
That's
just want
9 years after the Jupiter Saturn conjunct. Yeah.
just also looking at the monthly. This is the monthly MACD, which I'm going to kind of enlarge here on the S&P 500. We're getting a pretty bullish signal here. When you've got a long red period that finally turns to green, that's historically been, pretty favorable. You had that here back in September 09. You had that here back in September 16, and you got, that really does play out as a long, projecting a longer rally. So just looking at this,
And isn't that interesting?
One technical signal.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because at 2015, before you turned green in 2016, that red in 2015 was, I think that was the last Venus retrograde in Leo.
Yeah, for sure. That Virgo Leo one, yeah. And by the way, Ethereum has that Venus retrograde. The Ethereum inception chart has that Venus retrograde at 0 Virgo. Just a little financial astrology aside. So
that's what makes financial astrology so exciting, because it correlates so many times beyond just coincidence, I think, to these long-term, intermediate-term, even primary cycles, highs and lows. It's just a wonderful, wonderful correlative study.
So in the a little bit, let's just look at. I want to bring our viewers' attention to this one signal that we were talking about earlier. That's coming up here. It's a bit concerning. It's not like one of the big, outer planetary cycles, but one of the things I was looking at and was sharing with Ray was that right around the end of September, beginning of October, Mars, which will be debilitated in the sign of Libra, so already kind of astrologically in a weakened position, it's going to conjunct the South Node. South Node in both financial and medical astrology is kind of well known for having some destructive ability. It wipes out vitality, wealth. It can bring losses, karmic debts from the past. And so when a planet is both in a debilitated by sign and afflicted by conjunction to the South Node, it's historically it's considered to be in a very super weakened state. Now, I looked at the last time that this happened, and sure enough, it was October 1987 was the last time that this aspect happened. And there was a stock market crash. So we can't, again, I don't know if it lines up with any of the larger cycles that we've been talking about here. I don't know if in and of itself it's enough, but there's a lot of talk that there could be a government shutdown in October, more of this dysfunctional government infighting between the House Republicans. And also what Ray and I we're talking about is that Pluto will be at 27 Capricorn, making the kind of last hurrah of the USA Pluto return. So I think this is a cause for concern here in the fall, that this could bring some volatility to financial markets if there's another government shutdown. Now, we just squeaked through that debt ceiling crisis, right? We just got through that. Now, of course, there's another US dysfunctional political problem on the horizon. So I just wanted to throw that out there and put that on the horizon for people. So I don't think we can be, we just have to be cautious, right? I wouldn't get excessively confident or bullish. Judith Hill, I think you know Judith Hill, the famous medical
Yeah,
astrologer.
yeah.
She told me, she said, I'm not a financial astrologer, but Mars is really important for financial markets. She
True. It's a
said
trigger.
Mars is your confidence. If Mars is really weakened and debilitated, market confidence can suffer. Um, so I don't know if you agree with that, but
Well, tied into what you're saying, Robert, Pluto going back to its return, Pluto in Capricorn. Pluto rules the 4 Ds, debt, deficits, downgrades, and defaults. And, what you're pointing out here, a correlation that you've seen the last couple of times over the last, it's only happened twice in the previous 50, 60 years, has been a big
yeah,
stock market drop. You noted that
yeah,
back in the 1960s, you noted it back in
68.
1987. And Pluto returned to its position here. And we just see the credit agencies, they just
Yeah,
downgraded the US debt. They're about to downgrade some of the 10 major banks in this country.
right.
So you're seeing Pluto already starting to operate as it's known to operate when it's highlighted in the heavens. And so seeing that the next shutdown and the next vote necessary to keep the government going is going to be around October, I
Yeah.
think. So it could be it might be more tense than we had in late June, early July.
Yeah, I'm
So
just throwing up a headline here, just so our viewers know that we're not making this stuff up. The Washington Post recently, right on July 24th, right around when Venus went retrograde, the Washington Post published this piece. The federal government could shut down in October,
yeah.
and here's why. So it has to do with the House Republicans don't want to pass a spending package, and they might shut down the government over it. So again, this is just something to keep on the horizon and to be a bit concerned about. But I think that bigger picture, if there is a government shutdown and a market pullback, I think it's just another buying opportunity for the long-term investor.
Yeah, that would be the pre-presidential election year low. Then we're kind of looking for that in October, November. So maybe it starts in October, maybe it goes till November. By the time the sun conjuncts Mars or shortly thereafter, it's
Yeah.
probably over and we have a happy Christmas, if there is such a thing this year. But
I'm optimistic. I like that Jupiter Saturn sextile coming back into
yeah,
effect at that in January and February, and then we have that exciting Jupiter Uranus conjunction in April. And so I think that those are generally favorable. And the next really big problem is the Jupiter Saturn square in August September of 2024.
well, I'd like to point out the Jupiter Uranus conjunction coming up. That's a
Mhm.
very important one too. What is it, April 20th, 2024? There's a couple of things I want you to talk about
Mhm.
the halving that's going on then in a
Mhm.
second. But I want to point out the last time that Jupiter conjunct Uranus in Taurus was I think it was around May 7th of 1941. Okay.
Oh, in
Again, it was right
Taurus.
before World War II. It's another war thing. But also the
Mhm.
market had dropped 15% at that point. And it started to rally. It rallied 15% out of there for 2 months. And then it fell further into April of 1942. And then it really took off. So it's going to be critical, I think, for the stock market that time, for the economy. But I think the thing that excites me most of all is what you talked about a little earlier before we began this interview, and that's the halving that's going to be taking place in Bitcoin. So let me have you explain that to the listeners, because a lot of my clients are going to be listening to you as well, and I think it's very
Okay.
important what you got to say here.
Well, the Bitcoin halving is the amount of newly created, right? The Bitcoin, it's actually the official designation is like the miner reward halving, right? So the miners who operate the Bitcoin network, they process the transactions and they get rewarded in Bitcoin. Currently, I think it's like 7 Bitcoin. And in 2024, the amount of newly created Bitcoin is going to drop by 50%. And that happens every 4 years. It's just programmed into the Bitcoin software protocol. So it's going to go down to 3.5, or I think it's 3.75 Bitcoins will be created every, whatever I can't remember what the exact, I'd have to go and look up, the exact, how many of those new, it's like every 10 minutes or something like that. But the bottom line is there's going to be a lot less newly created Bitcoin after 2024. And as we know, supply reductions tend to create upward price pressure. And historically, that has been the case. Let me see here if I can just find my sort of Bitcoin halving chart. So a lot of, there's a lot of buzz about this within the Bitcoin cryptocurrency community, right? I mean, everybody, all the Bitcoin big traders and investors have this on their on their timeline, right? But maybe people who aren't super plugged in to the cryptocurrency markets might not be aware of, how bullish this has tended to be in the past. And I'm gonna just try to see if I can find a good chart to throw up here. Just give me 1 second. So that's, the other big thing for Bitcoin is that there's several big spot ETFs. That are possibly could be approved in 2024, including BlackRock, which is the biggest, and they have something like a 99% approval rating for their ETFs. And right now we have a derivative we have a derivative ETF for Bitcoin, but a spot ETF would be a game changer because that would bring a lot bigger inflows into the market. Yeah, I can't find my halving chart, but I do have another
Robert,
one. Okay,
what is the lead time? What is the lead time from the low that precedes the halving into the halving?
Yeah, so let's take a look. I do have, this is not my chart. I just want to give attribution. This is actually Zoran Cole's chart. He's at Captain Cole 1 on Twitter. So I don't want to take attribution for this chart, but you can follow him on Twitter. He's a good Bitcoin technical analyst. So here's the previous two halvings was July 2016. And the low was back in 2015 in the summer of 2015. So you had a big rally going into the halving, actually went down on the halving, and then you had a parabolic rally for 75 weeks, 525 days after the 2016
Well, it looks like the big low was about a year before the halving.
Yeah,
it started moving up a year ahead of time.
That sounds about right. Yeah, that sounds about right. Then you had that 2018. You had the 2018 bear market period here. So that low was about a year and a half, before the halving. You had a kind of a sideways move into the halving. And then once again, you had a parabolic rally coming out of the halving period that lasted, in this case, for 329 days, almost a year to the top from the halving. So this gentleman, Mr. Cole here, is projecting the halving again is going to be in April of 2024. And he thinks there's going to be a shorter cycle to the top of about 168 days. So that would bring us to October of 2024, having a top. But that would be the period where we'd be looking for Bitcoin to make some new highs, would be in the post-halving period. So that's, and again, that halving is in April of 2024. Certainly the media is going to pick up on this. There'll be a buzz about it, and that will create a strong, that'll create some FOMO and some sentiment. Now, one thing that I have discovered astrologically for Bitcoin, which which I'll throw that chart up here in a second, is that there's an extremely favorable convergence of astrological factors for Bitcoin right around that period of the halving. So right around the period we would be looking for something pretty big and expansive. Sure enough, I'm going to share that with our viewers, with my followers and your viewers as well. This is the Bitcoin natal chart. This is the inception from the Genesis block, which is January 3rd, 2009 at 6:15 p.m. I have rectified the location to London, done a lot of research on this. Nobody knows for sure, but I'm very confident these days that London is the correct location. So one thing I want to share with you guys is using secondary progressions. And we're just going to go a couple months at a time here. I'm going to skip up to that halving in, yeah, right here in, well, this is in May actually, right? So if we look at the Bitcoin progressed sun is going to start to make an exact conjunction to the Bitcoin natal Jupiter. Well, we think this is pretty significant. And we've seen that the progressed chart in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies has, as well as the solar arc chart. In fact, Christine Skinner had pointed out that the was it Bitcoin like progressed Saturn was giving a key signal, for a big sell-off, and she was correct. So, progression, solar returns, solar arcs, they all can give useful signals. We think the Bitcoin progressed sun on the Bitcoin natal Jupiter is going to, it's quite favorable. We think this is quite favorable for a big, extended rally for Bitcoin. And it's going to be in the same degree for about a year there. But that's not it, okay? That's just one of the factors we're looking at. So remember this, guys. Remember 29 degrees Capricorn, okay? Progressed sun on the Bitcoin natal Jupiter. Now we're going to throw up the transits to the Bitcoin natal for that same period of time. And that's going to be, again, right around May. So remember, you've got the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. We think that's going to be very favorable for big tech and cryptocurrencies. There's a pretty good correlation between Uranus and crypto. But look at what's going to happen here is, well, Neptune's also going to be at 29 Pisces there, okay? So that's going to make a nice 60-degree angle, the sextile, not only to the Bitcoin natal Jupiter, but also to that progressed sun. So that would seem to indicate, there's going to be almost like a divine kind of fervor. There's going to be, I think, an increased faith in Bitcoin. I like Neptune for like confidence and faith. And it almost seems like there's some kind of divine inevitability about it. Now, if I just go a week, one more week out, then Jupiter and Venus also line up at 29 degrees. They sextile Neptune, they trine Bitcoin natal Jupiter and progressed sun. So this is a pretty big, when I saw this, this is a pretty big alignment. Nothing is ever 100% guaranteed in cryptocurrencies. That much I can tell you. I don't want to mislead anyone. I'm just saying that this is encouraging. Knowing what we know about the halving has historically produced longer big rallies. This seems to confirm and give confluence that Bitcoin is going to outperform in 2024. So I just wanted to, this is something I've been working on. I wanted to share that with you guys. And I think that Bitcoin, I think the next couple of months is really going to provide an opportunity for some dollar cost averaging accumulation of Bitcoin and Ethereum and maybe a few of the other smaller cryptos as well. Does that line up with anything that you're seeing, Ray?
Well, it lines up with your first question, which makes me want to change my answer a little bit. Like, what do I see as the best opportunity for investors right now? I think I want to look at Bitcoin a little more closely. I've been bullish on Bitcoin anyways, I mean, I'm a cycles analyst, and I think there is a real consistent 15 to 16 month cycle that's part of a bigger 4-year cycle. And I think that did bottom in November with the FTX collapse. And so it's the early stages, and early stages of cycles are bullish. They don't always get really bullish at first, but we've already been up 100% from that low to the high in 6-7 months. We've been going sideways for a while.
Yeah, let's throw up the Bitcoin chart there for a minute. This is just something I put together here, which is that kind of Wall Street, like the cycles, right? From euphoria to depression, and then you get disbelief, hope, optimism, all the way back up to euphoria, and then back down to panic, depression, and it starts all over again, disbelief, hope, optimism, thrill, and euphoria. So I think, this is really also lines up here with what we've seen, previously with just the technical analysis, right? Back in 2000, 19, we saw that breakout of that long bear market downtrend that led to a parabolic rally. Well, Bitcoin has broken out once again above the downtrend line from 2022. And historically, that has, just looking at the price action, also the Bitcoin monthly MACD is doing the same thing as the S&P 500, also turning green in the last 2 months.
Well, I think you said you were looking for another low here in Bitcoin in the next couple of weeks, and that would fit with what we call the 1/3 phase of the primary cycle. That's usually about 11 weeks. And I think we're in week number 9 now. So another low in the next 2 weeks. Actually, it could be any time between now and the next 4 weeks, but 2 weeks is right in the center. That would be due. And then if cycles hold true in this bullish cycle, we would normally expect the market to break out to a new high for this year.
Well, we know that September has been historically very bad for Bitcoin, just seasonally. This is not an astrological thing. It's the only month of the year that has an average loss for Bitcoin.
Is that right? Well,
and Bitcoin has not had a positive September since 2016. So the good news is for buyers looking for that opportunity, we think the rest of August and September could be a great time to slowly scale in. If you already have, continue adding. And these are not going to be an overnight thing. I mean, I think we're going to be a holding into that 2024.
Okay.
So yeah, I think we've covered a lot of ground here. Was there any final thoughts, Ray, on any of the markets or any of the astrology?
No, I think we covered a lot of ground, as you mentioned. I think our viewers, your viewers, my viewers who are joining this are going to be able to glean some important suggestions, some important ideas that we presented today, and hopefully they'll be able to put that into a constructive trading plan. Because the most important thing to me as a trader and as an analyst is to have a trading plan and a backup plan. You know, I mean, just having a trading plan is not enough, because what happens when it doesn't go? You need to know when it doesn't go the way you think it's going, it's usually going the opposite way, and you better have an idea what that represents in terms of your risk going into it. So these are very exciting times. We got a lot of Uranus aspects in effect the next couple of weeks. We got them coming up again in late October, November. These are not smooth waters to be trading under, but they do offer tremendous opportunities, especially when you get big sell-offs of 8% or more. So my advice to the listeners is be on the lookout for that between now and the end of the year, maybe a couple of these 8% declines. And those are times to buy, because I don't think this bull market is going to be over before the election. I think, in fact, I even think after the election, you still got another run at it in 2025 before it's over. So with that in mind, I'd like to wish all the listeners happy trading, good luck with your planning, and keep in touch with Robert and myself and the reports we put out, because I think these are excellent guidelines we present to you in terms of market timing.
Well, thanks. I learned something here today too, that you pointed out that those 3 planets changing signs all within a couple of months of each other, that hasn't happened in
2 weeks. Within 2 weeks is important.
And then that hasn't happened in, you said 300 years or something.
That's the three major planets changing into these signs. Yeah, that you haven't had the 3 major planets making ingresses within 2 years of each other since 300 years ago. Yeah. And before that, it was 300 years.
So this is a big change that's coming up over the next couple of years. Very big changes. It's certainly going to affect central bank policy, financial markets, the economy. So thanks for those great insights and thoughts. And I really appreciate you joining us today. Ray, do you have any big workshops or seminars? I know you're launching your pre-sale of your 2024 forecast, but do you have any other stuff on your horizon?
Yes, we have the 2024. We have an annual pre-sale that begins in August and goes to the end of October. It's the only time you can get at least 10% off on all our subscription services. Plus, you can get about a 40% discount if you're a subscriber off the forecast book, which is our most popular product we put out there. Prices are $45 right now, I think, if you're a subscriber till the end of October. After that, it goes up to $66. As far as events coming up, starting the last week of August, which is a week from this Saturday, August 26th, I think it is. Is that right? August 26th, 2026. We begin a 6-week course on solar lunar correlations to short-term trading opportunities in the stock market, precious metals markets. We'll deal with the euro and Bitcoin. So
Oh,
it's a
wow.
6-week course on what are the solar lunar combinations that indicate these buying opportunities, and what is the setup? What does the
Interesting.
market have to do to create isolated lows or isolated low highs for you to take this trade? So it's a 6-week course, and you can find out about that through our website at mmacycles.com. Yeah.
I might have to take that. I
You
might
might
have to
like
take that class. That sounds
it.
really interesting. And I've been reading Ray's annual forecast for the last 7 or 8 years, and it's definitely one of the most important books for understanding the market cycles and the astrological cycles for the year. I always read Ray Merriman's annual forecast.
Thank you, Robert.
And I always recommend it to my viewers as well.
Thank you.
Guys, I have an Intro to Financial Astrology course that's launching on Saturday, September 30th at 10 a.m. Pacific time. It's also a 6-week course, and we're going to go through, we're going to, understand the planets and sign correlations to the financial correlations. We're going to look at the major outer planet cycles, how to look at natal charts, inception charts for Bitcoin, IPO charts for Apple and NVIDIA, how to read natal charts. And we're going to look at a lot of different financial astrology stuff. So that is going to run basically for most of October and November. That is going to be on my online store. I'm going to post that here in the video description. You can also find that on my Twitter, which is at AstroCryptoGuru. So check me out on Twitter as well. And you're at MMA Cycles, I believe, on Twitter.
MMAcycles.com. And I want to give a shout out to Johnny DiPoce, who's the director and the teacher of the Merriman Market Timing Academy, which will be presenting this course on solar lunar correlation short-term trading. He and I will be presenting that together, along with a couple of our students. Yeah,
Johnny was on here last year as well, and I'm hoping to have him back again soon.
Good.
All right. Well, thanks for taking out the time. We did a nice hour-long discussion here. I think it was hopefully this is going to be really, really good information for the people. And thanks again, Ray, for joining me today. And we'll be in touch. And thanks for joining and watching the Crypto Damus Astrology channel, guys. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great week, everybody. Have a great summer.